Joining a professional body has never been more important. Join thousands of other professionals just like you who are getting ahead with CIHT membership. Go to the CIHT website and discover exclusive resources and why the leaders and future leaders of the sector are members with CIHT. Welcome to CIHT Podcasts.
In this CIHT podcast, we will explore what resilience to climate change means for the transport sector, how it impacts mobility, and how we can use data to better plan the future of transport. This podcast features the CIHT technical champion and principal consultant at AECOM, Federico Perrotta.
Hello, Federico, and welcome to Transport Talks CIHT podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Thanks, Sarah, for inviting me. It's Federico Perrotta here, principal consultant at AECOM. I'm based in Nottingham into the strategic consultancy team, and my main areas of expertise are pavement engineering, asset management, and severe weather.
We're here today to have a chat about resilience to climate change. So my first question for you is, what does climate resilience mean to the world of transportation right now?
Resilience has taken different meanings to different people across history. Main definition of resilience would be the ability of a system to adapt and recover from change. In the world of transport nowadays, possible main challenge that the sector is facing is climate change and being able to evaluate the performance of roads and to inform mobility planning, design, construction and maintenance is possibly the main concern at present. The effects of climate are undeniable all across, and possibly cooperation between all parties involved is possibly the main solution that will help us adapt slowly to the change and find a recovery in a way.
Do you think we currently have a good understanding of what the impacts of climate change are on transportation?
From certain aspects, yes, and from other, I would say no. That's the short answer. In terms of where our strengths are present, obviously we see the effects of climate change into flooding events, into more severe weather condition that affects our travel every day. We see customer complaining around how that affects their journeys. And we need to be able, as engineers, as usual, we need to be able to have the data to back that up. No, it's that's our engineering mindset that comes into play and says, well, that's the effect, but what's the root cause? And often it's very difficult to identify where that's at. Many people refer carbon is one of the root causes. In some aspects, I would say perhaps the keenness in designing and building amazing infrastructure in the past. Perhaps I've had little thinking of what the consequences of that construction could have been on future use, on maintainability issues. So really nowadays trying to understand what the performance of the network is, and perhaps taking advantage of all that data that is out there and perhaps is not taken full advantage of at present, could be a good way to establish vulnerabilities and ultimately estimate which areas of risk and perhaps identify priorities.
You have mentioned customers complaining about the impacts of climate change on the physical infrastructure and the ability of people to travel. Can you tell us how climate change has an impact on people's mobility?
I think the other day I was going to work myself and I've had some delays. I'm really a supporter of active travel and use public transportation. How can you blame the bus operators when some flooding affects the use of a road and some rerouting is needed to make sure people that use the transport are brought from A to B? It requires some planning. It requires certain skill set that sometimes we struggle to find across industry. It requires also some patience. If we want to achieve the final objective, which is to make a sustainable and resilient transport infrastructure, we are all on the same boat. We need to find the solutions all together and collaborate on that.
What are some factors around resilience that you take into account on your daily work or projects that you are developing? Can you give us some examples of that?
Carbon is definitely one of the factors. We have spoke a lot with many clients that are concerned about the estimations of carbon. Obviously, establishing a baseline for that is difficult because there is little data, and where there is data, perhaps the uncertainty around that type of information that is coming through is unclear, and that doesn't really enable to define a clear plan of that. Also, temperatures. We have seen, obviously, that can be a consequence of raising in greenhouse gas emissions and so on, but temperatures are rising, especially in the summer. And we have seen that affecting the performance of pavements quite a lot. There is quite a lot of impact of temperatures on the performance of asphalt materials. And this has been designed in the past. The materials have been designed to operating in certain range of temperature. Obviously, if that increases, the requirements around that need to change as well. This is part of the work we do to help with the resilience of the infrastructure nowadays.
You mentioned data quite a lot and the importance, to have that evidence. And there's also new technologies involved in all this. What is the role of these new technologies in tackling climate change and then build that resilience that we need?
So I would start from current standards and specification. And I will say that those have set some clear requirements in terms of what data needs to be collected, for what purpose, to solve what challenge. And that has been really useful. It's been really useful at a planning stage, in the design, and also in the maintenance side of things to understand what needs to be done. Because let's be clear, it's difficult that we are going to build infrastructure or a lot of infrastructure in the future. Maintaining the current infrastructure is key. However, there are a lot of challenges that road authorities, engineers, communities struggle to solve. What in the past, through an engineering approach, was tackled in the way, okay, we have this challenge, how shall we measure? Nowadays, instead, we have a lot of information that streams to us through a lot of different sources. Thinking of cameras, I'm thinking of social media, I'm thinking of microphones, I'm thinking of our Fitbits, our gadgets, smartphones. Everything can work as a sensor. And if we can really take advantage of that information stream that comes to us, to have an understanding of the challenges the customer face, that can give us some really powerful insights of the challenges that our people are facing, and perhaps identify problem first, the risk associated with it, and come up with a plan to find a solution together.
All of this will require possibly a lot of new skills or reinventing some of these skills. What would be a recommendation that you would give someone who is joining the profession right now and is interested in data and new technologies?
Two aspects on this. Obviously, to anyone joining the profession nowadays, stay curious. It's easy to explore and understand certain topics when at the end of it there is an exam to be done and a test to pass. We need to remember that if we are in this field, it's because of our passion, of our ambition, and the need to always improve our skills is a duty that we have as engineers. In fact, I will say that taking part into professional institutions, engage with the wider community, not only with the few colleagues that we may or may not see in the office, with the wider range of opportunities that are put there by, again, professional institutions, but also organizations, international organizations, thinking of, CIHT, PIARC, and the likes. I think is a really good way to understand what the challenges in industry are and try to see where we fit within the industry. Again, a young engineer, a young transport professional, will struggle at beginning to understand where do I fit in here. Well, stay curious, engage with the community, and you will find your place, especially that.
Thank you so much. That is a very good message to anyone who is entering the sector. And that also made me think about collaboration. You know, one of the things that we say a lot in our sector is that we work in silos. So what do you think, the skills, but also the expertise that we would need to bring on the same table to better understand climate change and how to build resilience for it?
So this is a really good question, and I think it's a challenge of its own. As I said, the ability of looking at alternative data sources nowadays might become key. And the way we process that information requires a skill set into the statistical, mathematical modeling, perhaps digital, perhaps artificial intelligence comes into place. It's difficult, though, to find people that have this skill set, that have an interest also in the civil engineering or into the transport professional side of things. This is because some of the things that the giants, the tech giants like Google, Facebook, Amazon, the likes do, perhaps are more appealing at present. But also possibly we need to reevaluate also the engineering courses. Perhaps we need to put much more focus on inspiring the next generations, that these are skill sets that are required. Yeah, make society understand that nowadays engineers are not anymore designing with a pencil and a square the buildings or the drawings, and etc. But it's also a matter of analyzing large quantities of data for which data analytics skill sets are required.
I will now go back to something that you were mentioning before, which was around current standards and specification. Do you think there is enough clear and mostly possibly coherent guidance in the sector right now around this?
So definitely there is guidance out there. I must admit that considering the guidance comprehensive is probably an error that we have made in the past. As young engineers should be curious and always keep learning. I would say also the more experienced sort of professionals, the sector as a whole, should learn from the past, from the mistakes that we have made, and drive for that continuous improvement. So if we think that some specification guidance is currently not supporting tackling climate change, climate adaptation in a certain way, I think it's right we speak up. It's right we have that honest conversation with clients to make sure that future generations can actually live in a better world in a way.
I assume that in your daily job, you are at the interface between the profession and then the final client. How do you find it to explain to your clients who, of course, have a budget and they want to stay within a budget, how important it is to actually invest now in climate resilience and climate adaptation to save in the future? How is that conversation for you?
I must admit that clients are very conscious of the challenges that climate change is posing to them, to the profession, and to society as a whole. So it's really easy to actually bring to the table those conversations and have that honest exchange of ideas about how we can tackle certain problems and identify the best solution for it. We have recently worked alongside the National Highways looking at a very niche topic, which is the production of microparticles from tire wear. We may not think about it, but how much plastic can be produced by the deterioration of tires interacting with the pavement. And I remember myself making this example of cheese on pasta, and how the grater is as important. The grade of the grater is as important as the quality of the cheese to produce the particle of cheese. That translates in the surface characteristic of the road are designed, and does that have an impact on the production of tire wear? Again, the client immediately understood and took accountability for the fact that they are responsible for specification and guidance in regard to the design of the roads, of the road surface characteristic, of the type of material that you use to build roads, and immediately action that this is something that we want to investigate.
If you had unlimited resources, you're in an ideal world, that you could invest in one thing that could really help us tackle climate adaptations and resilience to climate change, what would that one thing be?
I would tackle the problem to the root, and I will go for investing in education of the future generations and investing more time in inspiring them, in developing those skills that the sector needs, and developing that understanding. There is no preconception and no barriers to it. Everyone can have their contribution in the field of engineers, and everyone should pursue a career into the sector. So I think the educational side of things, I think will have the greater impact in the future of our sector as a whole.
If we think now about the future and how things around climate change might still be changing and might possibly get worse if we do not act right now, what would be your recommendation then to not let this happen?
In this case, I would say collecting right data, evaluating what information is out there to be able to evaluate performance and reduce the uncertainty around the performance evaluation, I think is critical. Again, to identify vulnerabilities, but also to assess what the risk is and identify what the priorities are at planning, design, again, maintainability stage. Whichever stage of the life cycle of an infrastructure we will have to make decisions, and only data can tell us where we need to go.
When we think of transport shapes our lives, it shapes the economy, it shapes the way a country functions. So why is it important to think about transport and climate change together?
It's really important that we think this together. Transport, climate change, doesn't matter whether we are in industry, in academia, if we are part of the public, we are on the same boat. Every single little action that everyone, independently of where we sit, we can take, I think will have an impact. And if we set an example, a positive example, showing that a small action can make a difference, I think can be powerful. It can inspire others to take action as well. And together we can get out from trouble.